Okay, so this is the Bible study for Matthew chapter 6, verses 16 through 24. Um, and the text for today says, "When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. Eyes are healthy, your body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." So remember that you can download PDF copies of this Bible study at www.abqnaz.org/alive so that you can follow along with us. And let's just have a time of prayer as we get started. Dear God, we're so grateful for this day. We recognize you as being present as we read your and that this isn't just word on a page that you can invite our hearts and you can travel watching this video on this live place, place is their hearts, their purpose, their reason for praying in the public place with many words is that people would be, be I think that's what God is saying to us, what Jesus was saying in that teaching more than A. See how we should pray, not babbling like the pagans. He does say, don't pray like this. And then he said, this then is how you should pray. So, yes, I think that's right. Uh, D, spending time talking through our needs with God. So, we talked about that and we went through the Lord's Prayer, what we call the Lord's Prayer, how he taught us to pray and sort of the meaning of some of the pieces of that, and ultimately the importance of if he already knows what we need, why are we being told to pray for these things? And ultimately, um, talking through our needs with God. And if you've been with us in our church services, then you know Pastor Bain or not Pastor Bain, Pastor James did a wonderful job of expressing some of these thoughts and is doing a series on prayer during this time. And I just sort of um, I'm somebody who, and I feel like this is part of my personality, but I think it works so directly with what Jesus is commanding that it's so great is that, I have somebody text me and say, "Hey, Pastor Pete, I was thinking about this. Can we do this?" And instead of saying yes or no, I often answer, um, we can talk about that. Let's talk about that. Um, and a lot of times the answer is, um, yes, but I want you to consider these concerns that I have when we do this. So we can do it as long as you remember and consider these things that I have concerns about. Rebecca has had questions like that in our teen department, and I think sometimes she wants from me a simple yes or no. But I don't often give simple yeses or nos. I say, let's talk about the good points of that, the difficulties of that, or the stressors of that, the concerns, the risks of that, so that if you choose to go through that and do it that way, then you know what the concerns are. If you don't, then you have a good understanding of why and you address those concerns as well. So that's the way I handle things with my kids too. My kids are smart, and I think that they can understand. If they say, "Can I do this?" And if my answer is no, I want to make sure they understand why no. And if my answer is yes, I want to make sure they know what concerns I have, that I'm saying yes, even though I have these concerns. So I want to make sure that you don't um, sort of head down that path. And certainly, how we interact in the future after this thing will sort of be dependent on how you handle this yes. Um, and ultimately, what that means is I don't want to get a text question and simply answer yes or no. I want somebody to sit down with me and know my heart, and we have relationships so that in the end, what we choose to do is. With all its nuances, is considered. So I think that's what God wants too. He doesn't want to be the God that just says yes or no, the God that just gives us something or doesn't give us something, answers prayer or doesn't answer prayer. He wants to talk to us so that we can know his heart and the things that he has concerns about if we pursue this course, or if he gives this, or the reason that we're not doing this is that I have big concerns about this in your life. And if we choose to have relationship with him that way, then we won't be, so our prayer will be not transactional. Uh, uh, we will instead have relationship with our God, um, and and it's okay to talk to him about our needs, but he wants relationship. So that's kind of carryover from last week, but we're still talking about these concepts. So number 2 says, what does verse 16 say? And we're going to stop at the very beginning. So when you fast. So it may not be clear on your copy of this. I don't know, but there's 3 blanks there. When you fast, dot, dot, dot. So what does this suggest? It suggests that it's a when and not an if. And let's just start there. That we don't think a lot about fasting probably in the modern church. It is a spiritual discipline. It is something that is scriptural. It is something that should be a part of our life. Um, it's not always clear how often it should be a part of our life. Perhaps it should be a regular part of our life. During certain times of the year, I think that was true in Jewish society in the Old Testament, and probably still in the New Testament. Um, I don't want to be legalistic about it, but I would say that it should be a part of our lives, particularly when we know that we need to spend some time focusing on God, whether it's to know His heart deeper and understand His desire for our life in a particular season of our life, where we're making difficult decisions or needing certain situations to be resolved or answered, that we should spend time devoting ourselves to God, and that certainly would be assisted by um, abstaining from other things. Certainly, in modern times we talk about I'm on a fast from my phone or the TV. I don't think that is purely fasting, but I think those are good practices. Um, Fasting in scripture is almost always associated with food, which is more of a need than a want. And perhaps it's that the fact that we have so little self discipline to begin with that we feel like we need to exercise self discipline and call it fasting in other areas. But but I would say sort of food abstinence from food is an extreme self discipline, because this is something that we all know we physically need for life. I've known people that have fasted for extended periods of time, 40 days, for instance. Which is something that is also found in scripture. And those were people that were feeling that God was calling them to change paths in life or start new ministries that were going to take a lot of dedication and devotion, and they wanted to make sure that it was God's will and that God was in it, and they made their decisions appropriately. And so they sought the Lord for 40 days like that. I've known people that have done it well and drank vitamin water or some kind of fruit juices to be able to not get ill. I've known people that have had outbreaks of sores on their body and on their face because um, of certain lacks of nutrition and things like that. And I think it's good to be wise when we enter into that sort of thing. But I also think that it doesn't really have to be that extreme all the time. That I know people that have fasted a meal once a week on a particular day and use that time to seek God in a more intense way. Um, so, anyway, those are some thoughts. But it says when you fast. It doesn't say if you fast. So whatever we make as a part of our practice in our life, I think it's good to realize that it's a when, not an if. So what should that look like? Number three, what does Jesus say we should and shouldn't do when we fast? A, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show that they are fasting. Now, I'm from Indiana, and when I think when I read that disfigure their faces, what jumps out in my mind is I think it was in the 80s. Bob Knight, the coach of Indiana basketball for many years, Hall of Fame coach, was asked about his game face. And he was a sarcastic, crotchety uh, dude, and he didn't like reporters that much, I think. And he said, I don't even know what that is. He said he didn't know what the game face was, and he sort of disfigured his face. So every time I read disfigured your face, I think about that, and I think, he didn't know what a game face was. What's a fasting face? You know, I've seen all sorts of faces, but I can tell you what my face looks like when I don't get food on time, and it's probably not all stretched out like that, but it probably is not a happy face. And he's saying, don't look somber. Like, go through life. Act like you're having a good day. Act like you're getting close to God, not like you're so frustrated and angry about missing a meal. Um, but more than anything, he's pointing out the tendency of us to want to look like we're fasting so that people know we're fasting. You know, I know people that have gone out to eat, you know, with people and got there and don't order anything, and somebody said, "Oh, why aren't you ordering? Come on, order something." They're like, "I'm fasting." And like, oh, we're sorry. Oh, yeah, very spiritual. And it's not that you shouldn't go out to eat and have fellowship with people and maybe even while you're fasting, but we don't have to make a big deal out of it. You know, you don't even have to tell somebody that that's why you're not eating. You say, nah, I'm not going to have anything today. Next time. I'll get it next time. B says, when you fast, do your hair and wash your face. So it says, put some oil on your head. And I don't know what their practices were at the time. You know, you know, I've got teenage kids, and I've been a teenager, and we don't need any extra oil on our heads at that stage of life. I think we got plenty of oil. But I would say take a shower. Don't look like you've been laying around all day because you were tired and hurting because you weren't eating. Take a shower, wash your hair, you know, put some body wash on, whatever. That's what it is. Look alive. Be ready for the day as you usually would. Whatever your normal practice is. Don't make it look like you're in misery, you know, that you've been laying around in sackcloth and ashes, tormenting yourself, so that everybody asks you what in the world's going on. You look normal. You know, go about your day as usual, other than the time you dedicate to prayer. If that's the whole day, and you're going on a prayer retreat, and you happen to run into people, you know, in the gas station or whatever, when you're on your way up to the mountains or whatever, you know, don't look like you. Um, my mom used to say, if you're sick, she said, you look like death warmed over. You know, don't look like that. Look like you're having a good day. Look like you're closer to God today than you've been for a while. And you know, put on some fresh clothes, wash your hair, put the gel on if that's what you do. You know, I understand putting oil on your head. Actually, olive oil is a wonderful moisturizer, and when I shave my head, sometimes I get some, you know, white dry skin, and I put that olive oil right on here so that I don't have that white dry skin. So maybe that's what he was talking about there. Um, C, remember that all of these devotional practices are for God and for our spiritual growth, and not for us to be seen as spiritual to others. I'll be honest with you. Um, my tendency has been to shy away from fasting in recent years because I had some direct experience with you know, a movement um, that sort of seemed to me like the emphasis on prayer and fasting was intended to tell everybody else in the church that we're better than you and you guys should be doing what we're doing. And honestly, somebody was, you know, prayer and fasting was their thing, and I was having people say, you know, Pastor Pete and the church over there at Sandia, not not very spiritual, but we're so spiritual. And I just kind of got to the place where I shook my head and said, if that's what it's about, I don't want any part of it. But can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Can't decide that we're not going to pray or we're not going to fast because other people have done it wrong. So, but I'll just say that that's been a part of my makeup. That these verses are so important to me because I've seen what seemed like it was being done wrong. Um, I had somebody invite me to a prayer meeting, and they said, "Have you ever been to a prayer meeting like this?" And I said, "Yeah, as a kid, we had prayer meetings just like this." "No, this is different. This is bigger. This is better. This is something I've never experienced." I'm like, "No, this is something I've experienced before." And honestly, um, if it becomes about us and people looking at us, I don't want anything to do with it. If it's about God and us getting close to God, that's what we need to be about, and we need that. Um, and unfortunately, I think people that draw attention to themselves give give the whole anybody who encourages us to pray and fast, give them a bad name and make everybody hesitant. So we need to be really careful. But nonetheless, it says when you fast, so it doesn't mean don't do it. It just means we need to be careful. Um, so then we move up, and let me just say this: all of these, the prayer, the fasting, and now the treasures in heaven section that we're moving into, the emphasis on all of it is let's have an eternal perspective. Let's care more about what God thinks about us, and whether we are investing in the eternal than we care about what people think about us. So it almost seems like this weird transition to talk about money or storing up treasures on earth versus in heaven, but it's not a weird transition. It's all the same point that Jesus is trying to make. You need to be more interested in pleasing God than pleasing people. And when you're investing, invest in things that matter eternally, not in this world. Why are you so worried about your status in this world? What you have in this world, what people think of you in this world. Let's start thinking from an eternal perspective. So, number 4 says, what does Jesus tell us in verses 19 through 21? Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. B, anything of value that you collect here on earth. I promise I had somebody read over this, but that's the wrong here. Will age, wither, depreciate, etc. Anything you collect here on earth will age, wither, depreciate, etc. C, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, which are eternal and do not disappear or degrade. Store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, which are eternal and do not disappear or degrade. So I've inserted those words disappear and degrade. Moss and vermin destroy, thieves break in and steal. Um, I'm in my 40s now. I've been a homeowner since I was in my 30s, 20s, since I was in my 20s. And I am continually amazed at how this home that I own needs constant maintenance, or else it doesn't just stay like it was. We had to have the roof redone. We had to have it painted. I oversee the properties of the church. Thankfully, we have a lot of other people that do a lot of the work on it now. I used to do a lot of the work myself too. But it's just amazing how much things degrade. The roofs, the eaves, the everything, water and wind and everything. It's like the whole world is conspiring to destroy property. And that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying you need to understand that things here on earth degrade. They depreciate. That's the the auditor's word, the CPA's word for it. They depreciate. They become worth less. I bought a truck. It already had 100,000 miles on it. We bought it used. but now it's got over 200,000. And it was a great truck at 100,000 miles ready to go out of town. And at 200 and some thousand miles, I'm like, I don't know if I want to drive it out of town. This thing could break down because things depreciate. And he's saying we have this tendency to invest in things here that break down. And when we're called to invest in things that are eternal, we're like, oh, I don't know. And we act like investing in the kingdom, like helping support an outreach event where somebody might get saved, or a ministry where somebody might give their life to Christ and be discipled. We act like supporting those things is kind of throwing your money away. But if I invest in property or vehicles, things that are concrete, that's what really lasts. But the truth is, Jesus is saying that that's the opposite of what's true. That when we invest in the eternal, when we invest in ministry, that there's fruit that's eternal. Whereas when we invest in properties and vehicles and whatever things we think um, will not go away, they degrade and things get stolen. And I'll just be honest, we've had worship equipment, speakers and soundboards and instruments get stolen before. And it's frustrating because we got to replace them so that we can continue to do worship at the level we're used to and things like that. But honestly, I've gotten to the place where I realize that's just stuff and that's not what really matters. But that, I'll be honest too, that there are other people that still haven't gotten a hold of that. And over my time in ministry, I've gotten those phone calls like, man, this happened or that happened. Can you believe this? This is terrible. We had some trailers stolen recently from the church property, and somebody called me, and I'm like, it happens. That is what it is. But I know that not everybody felt that way about it when it happened. Um, so, um, let's see. Um, C, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, which is eternal and do not disappear and degrade. Yes. D, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And that's the key, is what are we investing in? That's what's apparently important to us. So he's saying we can just watch and see what's important to somebody. What they're investing in is what's important to them. Number 5, what does this mean? A, don't ever buy anything. The homeless life is the only life. And probably most of us in our church have either experienced homelessness or seen it firsthand uh, as we minister to our community. And I don't think any of us think that that's the answer. So it's not that we shouldn't become homeowners. It's not that we shouldn't have any property or cars, vehicles, cell phones. There's certain things that have become so important to even being able to do ministry in our modern world, being able to connect with people and interact with people. Um, so um, so that I don't think that's the answer. B, be careful about what you value and where you invest. I think that is true. So we're not saying legalistically don't buy anything. All your money should just be dumped into the church. I mean, obviously, as a pastor, that's that would be some thought that'd be great. Everybody give all their money to the church, but honestly, I don't think that's always the answer. I think um, learning to invest properly in the kingdom and do the things God would have all of us do with our resources is the important thing. And honestly, I think the resources being in the hands of God's people is very important, which means both in your hands as a person of God and in the church's hands as the group that manages some ministries. So I wouldn't say give all your money to the church. I'd say that God has some that He wants you to steward and manage and invest in people's lives yourself. and that can't happen if all of it's given to the church, and then the church manages, and the church leaders are responsible for making sure it gets put to the use that God would have it. I think all of us should be putting our finances to use as God would lead us. I do think He's called us to tithe and give offerings over and above, but I think at some level, then He's also called us to manage, the rest of the finances that we don't give to the church, and do what God would have us do with those as well, and invest those in things that are eternal. Um, so um, let's see. No, letter C, remember that what you value will affect your behavior, and people will be able to see what you value when they look at where you invest your money, time, and any other resources you have. That's true. Number 6, what do verses 22 and 23 mean? I don't know. I think we took a commercial break. So all of a sudden in the middle of this, it says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Then it says, no one can serve two masters, and it's talking about God and money again. But it seems like it seems oddly inserted here about the eyes being the lamp of the body. Um, but I would say it's intentional. It's not an accident, and it's not talking about something entirely different, but rather be careful what you look at. So we know that when we value something, when we have a goal, I mean, that's the saying is, keep your eyes on the prize. If your eyes are fixed on it, that's where you're going. That's, what your purpose is, where you're headed. Peter, when he stepped out of the boat, he took his eyes off Jesus and began to sink. So we know that what we value, what we put our trust in, what we pursue, it's in our eyes. So I really think that he's pointing out that our purpose, our goals, our value is seen in our eyes. So if our focus is on the things of this world, and our eyes are on them, and that's darkness, and we're not focused on the will of God, then our the lamp of the body is focused on darkness, and darkness is what is entering. So I really feel like that's what he's talking about, and this is directly connected. C, remember that there are certain small things, attitudes, value systems, etc., that shape the rest of our behavior. Your focus, what you set your eyes on, guide the rest of your life. And so consider, I think, consider what your eyes are fixed on, and that is sort of metaphorical. But I think honestly, consider what your eyes are fixed on, um, in a very real way, because we do look at what's important to us a lot. If we find ourselves sort of gazing on the beauty of certain things, that can sort of become the goal of our life. And it's the thing that we're longing after. So we need to just be real careful. Where is our focus? What are our eyes on? Are we thinking about eternity? Are we thinking about pleasure and possession and prestige? Oh, that's three P's. That'll make a good Baptist sermon. Um, here on earth. Number 7, what does verse 24 tell us? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. You can't serve both God and money. So he returns to this concept. You got to decide what your goal is, who you're serving, what you're chasing after. Um, And so the last part of this question says, what master do you serve?